Okay, this is going to be a short video about one of my recumbent bikes. I call this one the Zevo. This is going to be a stream of consciousness type of video along with zero editing. So if you're offended by bad cinematography, you might want to just walk away now. Okay, so this is the Zevo. It was built by Davis Carver out of titanium. It was or is a custom bike. I did most of the design work on it. Davis had a lot of good feedback, so maybe we'll give him 10 or 15 or 20% credit for it. But in short, it's a one of a kind. So I thought it might be a relatively interesting video subject. There is a pretty extensive thread on Bent Rider Online about the development of this. I might put the link in the description. I also have a few online videos of me riding this thing, but nothing that really talks about the bike. So look for a few links in the description for follow-up information if you're interested. But right off the bat, what a lot of people notice is the steering geometry. Also, the drivetrain is a little bit unconventional. When it comes to the steering geometry, you can see I've got a pretty steep head tube angle, steering angle, and a negative rake fork. If I had $1 for every time somebody asked me if I was in a really bad collision where I put the fork on backwards, I'd probably have, I don't know, $10. So this, I have an article I wrote on my blog, my very exciting blog, that explains all that. I'll put that link in the description, but basically what that does for you is it gives you very stable handling at high speed and low speed. At low speed, you have minimal, what people call flop. So it just feels stable. It wants to go straight, even when you're going very slow. I mean, the terrain I ride in is pretty hilly, so that's important to me. Another thing that you'll see is we've got a power idler here, and then in the more normal spot below the seat. The whole point of that is to try to get the power side chain line to basically follow the frame tubes. You see that? And then along the boom there. The whole idea is that if you have the chain aligned with the tubes, you put minimal bending moment on the tubes and the frame is stiffer. People say, oh, you got a second power side idler, that's going to waste energy. Yeah, it might waste some. I think, you're talking about maybe, this is a hunch, a couple percent. I think frame flex makes it, you might have 10, 15, 20% at stake with that. So anything that makes the frame stiffer, I think, is worth a little bit of frictional loss in the drivetrain. That said, when I spin the pedals backwards, it doesn't feel any more draggy than some of my other bikes. Actually, it feels less so than some of them. So I'm not too worried about that. The gearing I've got on this is what's normally associated with a 1x12 drivetrain. I've got a 11 to 50 Sunrace cassette that fits on a regular 10-speed Shimano free hub, and I paired with that what is supposed to normally it was a 2x12 Shimano SLX rear derailleur. Now this is supposed to only work with up to 45 teeth, but I added a wolf tooth road link to drop everything down so it can shift to the 50. This derailleur is nice because it's meant to go on a 2x12 drivetrain, so it can accommodate some front shifting. Up front, I've got 46 and 38 with an outer guard. And one of the reasons I set it up like that and not just had a conventional double, the guard's nice just because it keeps me from putting the chain rings in the back of the passenger side seat of my car when I put it in the back. But it also sets everything inboard so that I have a reasonably direct chain line from the upper side power idler to where the chain rings are. So if I had used the outer position on the crank, there'd been more angle in the chain. As it is now, there's a tiny bit of outward lateral movement to the big ring, and the inner ring is almost perfectly straight. So everything's a compromise. on future editions of this bike, we might actually shift the bottom bracket to the left, or the non-drive side, to help allow, use conventional chainring spacing and still get a pretty straight chain line to that upper side power idler, which for purposes of knee clearance is important to keep tight into the frame. As it stands now, I've got pretty good clearance, but if someone shorter wanted to use this bike and they had to move the seat up, they might, if they didn't have skinny legs, they might have some contact there. Someone taller than me wouldn't have a problem, though. I'm about 5'9", average size. What are some of the other things about this bike, or how I have it accessorized? Maybe just other parts. I've got Metabike seat stays, and I really like these because they have the bridge that links the two sides, which gives it really good lateral rigidity. There's no slop in the seat. And I use the Velogenesis clamps. They're a little bit easier to get to a point where they don't slip. The stock Metabike clamps are fine, but you really have to, it feels like you have to over tighten them. Basically, I don't think you are over tightening. I haven't stripped anything, but that's the way it feels when I'm tightening it down. So that's why I went with those. Those work really well. I've got disc brakes on this bike. I've got the TRP spikes, and they work real well. Same as the Spire, but for mountain bike cable pull. While we're down here at this side of the bike, got idlers from TerraCycle. Those are the Sport series. That's the 23 tooth one they offer, and that's the standard return size they have. We got the same thing up high too. Getting back to the brakes for a second, I got these so-called ultimate levers from Light Pro. I ordered these directly off of eBay from a Chinese seller. It took like 2 months for me to get them, but they're super, super light. And I was thinking they might be throwaway, that they might not be strong enough or durable enough. But so far, so good. I mean, I've had this bike and been riding it for about 4 months now. I've got maybe, roughly 1,500 miles on it. And they seem just fine. If I crash them, they'd probably break in a second, but hopefully that won't happen. So rounding out the shifting, I have a micro shift 12 speed. What's nice about this is it does have an index mode. You had to use an Allen key to get to it, but it's there, which is kind of a nice backup. On the left side, I've got an old Suntour friction shifter. Something that I just put on the bike recently are these Togs. I think they call them thumb grips. So it's kind of meant to be used on a mountain bike where you're holding the bar like this normally, but this gives you something if you want to change hand positions, kind of put weight on your hands a little different way. You grip the Tog with your thumb like that, and you got one on each side, of course. I use it in a pretty different way. I just use it as another place when I'm riding to be able to just hook my finger on there, and it allows me to completely relax my shoulders and my arms. Very small amount of tension to keep my finger hooked on there, but I don't ride with it all the time, maybe about half the time. If I'm doing a lot of shifting, it's a little bit cumbersome to kind of go from the shifter to the finger rest, but that's what I use that for. And a couple other things real quick before I wrap this up for now. Since it was a custom bike, I got some braze-ons and things like that, or in places I thought they'd be useful. I had 4 of them put up here on the boom. At present, I'm only using one. I had the idea that I could get a top tube bag, the kind that bolt on for a nice clean mounting, but I found ultimately it would interfere with my legs. Something else I could use them for is to mount a pump there, so I could free up some space in baggage if I needed to. It's kind of nice to have a pump within reach. You guys might think this is weird, but I've had to hit a dog once before. I mean, I love dogs. I have a dog, but I had one that was definitely acting like it was going to bite me, and a little knock on the head, it sent it away. The dog was fine because it chased me the following week again too. Speaking of that, I'm more apt to use pepper spray if anything comes to that, and I've been carrying this around with me for I think about 10 years now, and not this one bottle, but in carrying pepper spray. I've never had to use it, but that's just there for rabid dogs and rabid humans. What else is interesting about this? Kind of worked in a nice mount for one of the fender attachment points there on the back of this lower main tube. Up around the front, I got another M5 bolt mount on the boom. Mounted this Paul light mount, which normally goes on top of a stair tube as a top cap, but it works really well for mounting a light there. But yeah, I think it gives you a little idea what this bike's all about. Really happy with it. Just pretty much met all my expectations. Although someday there might be, if a second version gets built by somebody, there's any number of improvements. Once you live with a bike, this is essentially the first prototype that you're never going to make it perfect the first time. There's a few lessons learned here in various little things, but all in all, it's turned out really well for me. If anybody has any questions, just get in touch with me and I'll answer them. Okay, so long.